And welcome, Raising Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking all things inner game. Tuesdays are for sports and sports parenting. Fridays are for everything and everyone. So how are you today? How are things with your inner game? Are you feeling good, I hope, or perhaps stressed out, worried? What's going on for you? For me, I'll say getting a little better. Hate to jinx it, but the cold feels like it's on its way out. Went to the gym this week a couple times, got a little run in. Still coughing, still tired. You can still hear a little bit of it in my voice, I think, but definitely getting better. I feel like I can see the light coming. Knock wood, no jinx. Also, there's a bit of stress this week. A couple of writing deadlines, a few things related to graduations coming up and college stuff. I do notice a certain level of just baseline stress, but not too bad. Hope things are doing at least as well for you. So, some things to talk about today. My ups and downs for the week, the importance of facts to a healthy society, the current state of the news, media, and being a thoughtful consumer of information, a great self-mastery practice, some thoughts on parenting teenagers, our weekly challenge, and our recommended items for the week. Another great new show I'm excited about. I'll start with ups and downs. What things were lifting me up this past week? What things were pulling me down, making life harder? In the ups column this week, one was college related. So our son was looking to get into an architecture program. Those tend to be very competitive. Applications seem to be up everywhere this year, so even more competitive. Long story short, he didn't get into any of them. And as you can imagine, that was a bummer. That was disappointing. He has some other options that are fine, but that did hurt a bit. So last week, a couple of things happened. First, one of the programs, and a pretty elite one, accepted him after all from their wait list. And that was just an incredibly exciting moment when we heard that. The bad news is it's insanely expensive, so it still might not work, but it was great to get in. Then it occurred to us to go back to another school who had rejected him for architecture, but accepted him onto a more general track, and say to them, he got into this fairly elite program. I'm sure there are some seats sort of in flux with the wait list and all that. Are you sure you don't have a spot for him in your program after all? It was a long shot, but really nothing to lose. Seemed like it might be a smart move. And it sounds like that might work out too. So it went from no architecture options to two good ones in just a week. And both were a surprise. Now, nothing for sure in either case, but they were great moments just on their own, no matter how they work out. So that was super fun. Another one was our daughter coming home yesterday. She's on her 8th grade trip. It's a tradition at her school. The 8th grade takes this epic trip, or at least hopefully epic, that they've been saving for and looking forward to for years. And this was an especially good one. But she was gone for 10 days, which is longer than she's ever been away. And also out of touch that whole time, because that's part of how they do it, being on their own. So we just really felt her being away for that much time. And she got back last night, which was just lovely for all of us. Finally, sort of an interesting one. You might know my main focus and identity for most of my earlier life was as a musician, a rock singer-songwriter, got 4 CDs out, all that stuff. But I haven't done hardly anything for 12 or 13 years now. Just moved on, don't really ever miss it, love what I'm doing now. But this past week, and this wasn't original music at all, but it was still a musical little thing. For some reason, I decided to learn the Randy Newman theme from Toy Story, You've Got a Friend in Me, on the piano. And it was just really pretty darn fun. It fell into place pretty quickly. I thought it was going to be harder to figure out. I've always loved the song. It's fun on the piano. I've just been really enjoying it. So that was a nice one too. For the downs, the cold is still the thing, right? It's still there. It's getting better, but it's still dragging things down. It's just always there in the background, sometimes in the foreground. I'm really looking forward to that being done. I don't know if you remember, but this is basically my second cold in a row. I had another one like 6 weeks ago. So I've been feeling off for what just feels like forever. and I cannot wait to be back to 100%. Hopefully next week I'll be able to report that. Fingers crossed, knock wood, all that. All right, those are my ups and downs this week. Next up, our quote of the week. Okay, our quote of the week. This week we'll hear from Abraham Lincoln. There's another person I like quoting because it makes me sound wise and smart. Actually, it probably sounds a little lazy, to be honest. And apparently a lot of the quotes that are attributed to him are not actually his. But anyway, I'm going with it. So our quote this week is, "If given the truth, the people can be depended upon to meet any crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts." If given the truth, the people can be depended upon to meet any crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. And I have to say, I do agree with that, although it takes a bit of effort sometimes for me to get there. And the thing that helps me is hearing about jury trials. Normally, nowadays, with all the talk of tribalism and motivated reasoning and willful blindness and all that, I can start to think that it's truly not possible to agree on anything with the other side. Once you stop relying on evidence and reason, agreement just goes out the window. But in court, that doesn't seem to be true. The E. Jean Carroll trial, the Trump trial a couple weeks ago, that jury was a mix of people, as it always is, but when they were presented with the facts in the context of the law, it only took them 3 hours to come up with a unanimous decision that Trump was liable for sexual assault and defamation. Pretty serious charges. So they were super clear about it and able to basically agree right away. Not basically agree, completely agree. Outside of court, you see none of that. All the tribalism, the bullshit, the gaslighting, it's all on full display. No surprise there, and still sad and disheartening. But in court, there's none of that. Given the facts, people can think clearly and come to agreement. You have to say that's good news. So the call to action here is, if you are putting out content into the world, to commit to being truthful in that. And if you are consuming content, to demand that you're getting the truth. That's the hardest thing for me in the tribalism. I can see how, if I'm constantly being fed lies, I would tend to believe them. But to prefer lies, to choose sources that only tell you what you want to hear, which is the story of the Fox defamation case, if you remember that. When they tried to tell the truth about the election, their viewers started going elsewhere, where they would be told the lies. That's hard to understand. That seems to me to be not being a responsible citizen and adult. Personally, this is just my wiring, I guess, but I am only interested in knowing the truth about things. If I don't know, I'll say it. If I think I know, but it turns out I was wrong, I'm embarrassed about that. I'll correct things later. I just cannot understand intentionally avoiding the truth. I guess it's just part of tribalism, right? If I'm open to new facts, I'm vulnerable to no longer being welcome in my group. That's terrible. It's depressing. But anyway, Abraham Lincoln, wisdom, our quote of the week. If given the truth, the people can be depended upon to meet any crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. Let's just do that. Can we? All right, next up, top stories. All right, top stories. This week, nothing in particular I want to talk about in the news. So I want to talk instead about the news itself and to continue this theme of sharing and demanding the truth. I'm not one of those people who generally likes to bash the news media. I'm a big supporter of journalism. I think it's an essential part of a healthy democracy. And of course, people who don't want a healthy democracy love to bash the media. That was Trump's biggest play. And he was explicit about it. He said, look, I hammer on you guys so people won't believe you when you write bad things about me. That's one of the essential elements of authoritarianism. Discredit the media so you can avoid accountability, which, by the way, if you remember, was our quote from last week. It's wrong and immoral to seek to avoid consequences for our actions. But that's a different conversation. So I'm a big fan of journalism in general, but I sure do feel like they mess it up sometimes, right? And not just do a bad job, but a damaging job. They are actually contributing to the decline of our society almost as much as social media. Here's one little example. I've mentioned a couple of times that I've started getting into Formula One racing because of the Netflix documentary Drive to Survive. I love the show. I know who the drivers are now and the team leaders. I'm just interested in what's going on. But somehow the internet gods have figured out that I'm interested, and I'm starting to see Formula One news items in my news feed. So I see that, I'm interested, I'm like, great, what's happening? But when I see the articles, the headlines, it's total crap. It's gossip, fake conflict, fake drama. It's basically reality TV. There's no actual news. It's just the lowest kind of trashy clickbait garbage, and I hate it. And the same thing is basically going on everywhere. This is a big part of why it's worked so well for me to go on a daily news fast, because the truth is, there's just not that much of it. Actual, important, and interesting news doesn't happen every day, and certainly doesn't happen every hour or minute, right? But in the modern media world, and really it started probably with the 24-hour cable news, when you have to fill all that time, and you have to get people's attention, because that's how you get paid, the only way to do that is to amplify unimportant things and exaggerate the drama. It kind of flashed me back to when I used to watch local news. And it was sort of the cliche, horrific, bloody car wreck news at 11, right? They had a daily thing. There wasn't that much going on in their town. They always had to hype up everything to get your attention. So this combination of always-on news and attention-based revenue is just a nightmare in pretty much every way. Now, I have some sympathy for the media. It's a tough business to crack. On the one hand, like every business, right, it can only survive if it makes a profit, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem is that the news also has a public responsibility. We can only be good citizens if we know what's going on, if we understand what it means, if we have some perspective and context, and we know what's actually true. We have to have facts and trust that they're facts. But because of human psychology, that's in direct tension with making a profit. And Fox is the poster child for that. They've figured out how to make money, but they're killing society because they don't care about the responsibility, about telling people the truth. When I scroll through my feed, you can tell what the sources are by the headlines. Fox is always something hyper-dramatic, frightening, and slamming someone on the left. Feels totally biased. I literally avoid clicking on any Fox News item. HuffPost is also hyped up clickbait aimed at the right. I also never click on those. Reuters, the BBC, their headlines sound like actual news on important topics. It's just so clear, the difference. So I don't really know what to suggest about all this. Obviously, I'm not any kind of expert. The network TV news shows back in the day, if you remember those, seemed to do a good job. They were credible and fair and genuinely trusted. Hard to imagine that was ever true. But the big difference back then, they didn't have to make money. The big networks did not expect the news division to be profitable. It was a public service, not service. That seems like the real problem. But I don't know how you get back there. The only thing I know how to do right now is just be a very intentional consumer of information, to support trusted sources, to not support biased sources, and to hope that the good ones find a way to stay in business because we need them. Not great, but not sure what more we can do at this point. Anyway, that's top stories for this week. Just some thoughts on the news and being a good information consumer. Next up, Inner Game Gold. All right, so these are the ideas and concepts I come back to over and over to help me stay on track. Last week, we revisited my favorite Zen gem, be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. Just love that so much. This week, sort of continuing with the theme, I want to revisit what I call the Marshawn Lynch technique. Marshawn Lynch again, great NFL player, running back. He has his practice where he looks in the mirror and asks himself, what kind of person do you want to be today? When we talk about things like we just did, how to be more responsible, intentional consumer of news, the question is how to do that. How do you change your behavior, especially when that behavior tends to be unconscious, like a habit of checking the news? Well, this is one great way. If you start your day asking, what kind of person do I want to be today? That creates a real awareness shift and sets you up to be much more intentional as you go through the day. Now, you might need to do it more than once. You might need to supplement it with other helpful reminders like posting a note on your calendar or something like that. But this is a great place to start. So there you go. Inner Game Gold for this week, the Marshawn Lynch technique. Look yourself in the mirror. Ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be today? And what kind of person do you want to be today? Super helpful. That's great. All right, next up, raise your outer game. Okay, here's where we talk about things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. This week, I want to talk about parenting, specifically parenting teenagers. We talked about teens' mental health last week. I talked about parenting teams maybe 6 weeks ago. But it's on my mind again right now because we have a special offer going on with our private coaching. I'm just reminded how much I love this material. So the material I'm referring to is the book, The Soul of Discipline, by my friend and colleague, Kim John Payne. He's also the author of Simplicity Parenting. Both those books were hugely helpful for us as parents, and especially in the shift to parenting teens. And both our kids are teenagers now. The main idea that helped me so much is that kids need a different kind of parenting depending on their developmental age. Young kids, tweens, and teens. And if we don't adjust our approach to fit their age, we're going to have trouble and difficulties and conflict. It's going to hurt our relationship with them. And I can absolutely say that had I not made that shift, I would not have the great relationship I do now with my kids, which is just so important to me. I could feel things starting to shift back then and trouble brewing as those years approached. But I changed my approach and things got a lot better. So I could not recommend the material more highly. But as an author and content creator myself, I also know that any book, no matter how good it is, can only do so much, can only bring so much change. The maximum impact comes from a more in-depth process. So that's what the special offer is that I mentioned. For the next couple of days, any parent who registers their child for our private coaching gets the Soul of Discipline Home Practice Guide, which is the deep dive version of the material from that book, The Soul of Discipline. Normally goes for $249. You sign up for coaching, you get the home practice guide for free. So the first suggestion is, if you're interested in making things easier as the parent of a teenager, check out Kim's home practice guide. There's a link in the show notes. It's a great program. If you're the parent of a teenage athlete and looking to help them boost their mental game, and you could use some fresh parenting tools, it's a great opportunity. Check out our website. Details are there. Link is also in the show notes. I think you'll love it. But again, it's only through Sunday night, so do take a look right away if you think you might be interested. All right, that's Raise Your Outer Game for this week. Next up, our Charging Station Challenge. All right, last week we had you continue the self-care challenge because that's what I felt I needed. It's always about me. This week, let's do the Marshawn Lynch technique again. Super straightforward, super helpful. Once a day, look in the mirror, ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? And see what that does for you. And of course, let us know in the community how it goes. Okay, that's it for this week's Charging Station Challenge. Next up, highly recommended. Okay, highly recommended. These are things I'm crazy about right now. Either I'm crazy or I'm just reviewing them. This week, I have a great new show I'm excited about. I was excited last week, too, about the new show, at least new for me, on Netflix called Ambassador. I still love that one, but it's only 8 episodes, and I finished them all. I'm actually pretty disappointed about that because I definitely wanted more of that. But I found another new one this week, and I'm super excited to see more of this one. So it's on Apple TV. It's called Silo. It's science fiction, sort of dystopian, but we're not really sure yet. Not really sure yet. It's very mysterious. Watched the first episode a couple nights ago. Just loved it. Basic premise. There's this community of people, maybe even 1,000 or so. It's hard to tell. Could be more even. They live inside what seems like a huge metallic cylinder, like really huge, that's mostly underground. Seems like it's on Earth. Not 100% sure about that yet. No way to tell what year it's supposed to be. And they believe that they can't go outside or they'll die. It's toxic out there. So their entire society is constrained inside this silo. But there are also a lot of secrets, a lot of strange things going on. We can't really tell. They don't know anything about their history. The popular story in their culture is that the history was all wiped out by the rebels some 150 years ago. It's an authoritarian society. People are afraid of, the people in charge. It's just very kind of creepy. Everything's tightly controlled. Like, what can you say? Who can have children? Just a lot of stuff like that going on. Anyway, that's enough detail. I don't want to give too much away. It's very well done. It looks great. Typical high-quality Apple TV production. Sorry if you don't have access to that. But that's my recommendation for the week. Silo on Apple TV. So far, super great. And that's it for this week's show. Sorry, I was just a little bit the mouth not quite connected to the brain this week, but that happens sometime. I'm going to blame the cold. In any case, if you like what you heard, in spite of all that, please do tell your friends, invite them to join us, and rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps more folks find it and get the help they need, the mental game charge we all need. If you have teenagers in sports, check out our mental game starter kit. It's a great set of resources, help you get started on the path of helping your child boost their mental game. It's super important, super helpful. So go to raiseyourinnergame.com, scroll to the bottom. You can learn about it. You can learn about it and register there. It's all free, of course. If you'd like to support the show so we can keep things ad-free, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link below, and thank you for that. For more mental game goodness, please join our free community, the Raise Your Inner Game Charging Station. Click the link here. Totally free. Would love to have you join us there. If you're listening to this on audio, but you like video, we post all our episodes on our YouTube channel as well. There's a link to that in the show notes. And finally, we will close, as we usually do, with Leo Tolstoy. Again, from the end of the Raise Your Inner Game book. He says, the ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. And that's what we're doing. Serving the people in our lives, serving ourselves. It's super important. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time.